Hey there. Does it seem like you're always too late for the game? You keep missing out on the opportunities. Well, there was a quote my father said all the time, and this kind of sums it up. He says, "A day late and a dollar short." Do you feel that way sometimes? In this video, I want to talk about some of my experiences, my personal experiences, and what I learned from them, and how being a contrarian, right there, um, has served me well. And I hope these lessons will help you as well so you don't have to go through the pain that I did. So you don't have to learn yourself. You can just see how other people succeed and fail and learn from that. All right, so maybe this will help you. So, what's a simple definition of a contrarian? Well, it's contrary. So, a person who takes a contrary or opposite position or attitude, they don't go with the flow. They move away from the herd mentality. That's what a contrarian is. So if everybody's going down this road, you go down that road. So you're being a contrarian. Oh, by the way, I'm Donald Henderson. On this channel, it's my goal to share lessons of success and failures so that you don't have to learn from your own mistakes. We all make mistakes, but maybe you can learn without going through the process like I did or other people did. I can talk about other people as well and what they learned, and I learned from them. So, what happened? Let me talk about some experiences. Back in 2008, they call it the Great Recession. Um, Now, I've experienced bubble markets in my lifetime, and this was one of the worst. I mean, in some ways, we're going through a bubble market right now with this whole AI thing, right? Some things will fall apart and some things will grow. But during 2008, there was a mania. I mean, people were crazy. And I mean crazy. They were doing things that ordinarily they would never do, but there was a feeding frenzy going on, especially with real estate. And everybody wanted to get on the bandwagon. So many people thought the appreciating home prices were going to go on forever. And over time they do go up, but this was crazy town. Even people that should have known better, and what I mean by known better, I'm talking about the professionals, the people that are experts in the field, whether it's real estate or stocks or whatever. I started seeing them go down this path, and I tell you, it was very tempting to follow suit. But like all bubbles, they burst eventually. So this was a time of cheap and easy money. It was the era of liar loans. If you could fog a mirror practically, they would give you a loan. People that made hardly any money at all would put down on paperwork and say, "Oh, I'm making $1 million a year," or "I'm worth $1 million," or whatever. And the craziness infected all parts of the real estate and financial industry. I mean, people that were mortgage brokers, that were processing these loans, everybody started feeling like they were invincible. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's the deal. If you give a loan to somebody and they don't perform, it forecloses, they disappear, whatever, and the value of the asset, in this case, a house, um, is still appreciating. So by the time that they do fail, you can foreclose on it and resell it and not only cover the loan that they had against that house, but you also can make some extra money. That was the thinking, is that the insurance policy was this inflation of values of houses. Everyone was buying real estate. People that had no business getting into it where they were financially. To increase the perceived value of homes instead of selling a listing. Now, what do I mean by that? The way things usually work in the real estate industry is that you work with a real estate agent. If you have a house and you want to move and you want to sell it, that's the listing agent. They put it into a database, information about your house, the asking price, pictures, things like that. And then there's other agents that work with buyers, and they find out from their buyers what they can afford, what they want, where they want to live, and go into the same database and pull it up. Well, there's a natural, there's negotiations for price, things like that. And sometimes it takes some time, but it's a very relatively slow process. Well, some pretty crafty real estate folks started leveraging a tool they use for other things. It's called auctions. Now, usually auctions are used for things that people are trying to sell to unload, like estate sales, things like that, or, priceless jewelry, whatever. But anyhow, it's going to the highest bidder. So if you've ever been in an auction or participated in an auction, there's a fever that goes on. It's like being in Vegas. People start thinking like, oh yeah, I really want that. And they said 10,000, I would say 15,000. And next thing you know, it's way up past what the real value is. And some people have really been taken to the cleaners by that process because the mentality they develop when they go to these things. Well, that's what happened. They would have houses that are on the market, regular houses, not being foreclosed or anything else, but instead of having open houses, they would have auctions. And every time they did this, these houses would sell for more and more and more. And what happened is that actually records as what they call comps. When you do comps, trying to figure out what a value of a house is, you try to look around the neighborhood, similar houses, similar neighborhoods, what were things selling for? And then you can say, well, here's the ballpark. Screw that all up, because now things that should have sold for 500,000 were selling for $1 million plus. So that caused the appreciation really fast. And like I said, bubbles, like what goes up must come down and bubbles must burst after a while. Okay, so this was going to happen. So it's all fun and games until it becomes unsustainable. The people are getting these liar loans, they're starting to default. People are starting to lose jobs because everybody's getting scared. These mortgages, how they're sold on the aftermarket is through different things in the stock market. And when people start finding out that the garbage, the liar loans or the fake loans are in these things they started to buy, they quit buying them, start selling them. And when you sell more than you buy, the value goes down. So things came tumbling down really fast. People in real estate were losing their jobs, if you want to call it that. It's a quasi business, but anyhow, they started not being able to make money. Mortgage brokers were going out of business. Mortgage companies were going out of business. Banks started going out of business. There was runs on people's savings. I mean, it had flashbacks of the Great Depression. So what was going on? People ended up with homes they couldn't afford. They couldn't afford the payments anymore. A lot of people were taking out variable interest rates. They thought, oh, well, the interest rates will go down, everything calms down. No, banks were starting to get stingy and very strict with their money as well. So when the interest rates were really low during the frenzy, interest rates started going back up. Laws started to change, things like that. Foreclosures were stacking up all around. I mean, there was houses, like whole streets of abandoned houses. There was neighborhoods in Southern California, what they call the Inland Empire, where they built brand new houses, just tons of them. They ended up bulldozing them because people started living there. And I'm not talking about people that rent or bought. They just broke into the houses and lived there and destroyed them. So they just tore them down just for the crime rate issue. So anyhow, these bogus bad loans that were sold on the stock market started bringing down stock markets, and it was a domino effect. It affected every industry. It wasn't just real estate. It wasn't just the banks. Killing banks and financial real estate industry. I mean, it was bad. I was in it. I was in aerospace. That was my day job, and then I also had some investments. I also was a real estate agent. That was my side hustle, and wherever I went, people just looked like they were waiting to die. It impacted every sector of the economy, real estate industry. Had my investments, and I was also a realtor. Fortunately, I still had my day job. But not everybody had that. My class of people, new licensees, we were going through the training, trying to scratch out our own piece of the pie. Under normal circumstances, we probably would have been doing halfway decently. I probably could have quit my day job and did that full time very easily. But there was nothing going on. For a while, everything just stopped, slowed down. People weren't buying anymore. I saw the face of dread and fear on a lot of my peers at the real estate company. There's some people that got into real estate because they thought, oh, this is really hot. I can make a quick buck. And then suddenly that dried up. Or they had lost their job because of things going down, and they were hoping to be able to make money, being a real estate agent. But I kid you not, there were some people I worked with, I looked them in the face, you could just tell they were scared to death. If someone snapped a twig, they probably would have jumped through the ceiling. They were on eggshells. I mean, it was really, really bad. Even when I was working in aerospace, we didn't know if they're going to start laying off as well because everything slowed down. The stock market, all the stocks started going down. Everybody was thinking that we're going into a depression, so everything stopped. Um, when the market was hot, like I said, these junior agents were running open houses. Okay, so when the market was really hot, there were so many houses on the market and things were turning so fast. The junior agents had the opportunity to get some experience, so they were doing the open houses. You go out to an open house or a house for sale, and you'll see some face mugshot on the sign out front, and you go on the inside. It's not the same agent. It's a new person. That the other agents are going out and finding these deals. I mean, they're raking in some bucks. Well, when the market crashed, um, you didn't see the junior agents in open houses. There was only a few open houses, and what you did find when you went there, it was so depressing, so scary. You would see uh, the listing agent, the person whose face is on the sign, they're in the house. The house is cold, dark, empty, bank owned. They're sitting in a folding lawn chair trying to sell something to make a buck. The reason why it's cold and dark is because, it's a foreclosed house. The bank owns it now. There's no heating, there's no electricity on there. And uh, this was a very common thing back then. You go into a house and you hear the chirp, chirp, the smoke detectors, because the batteries died from the house being not maintained for months and months and months. Um, no furniture in there. A lot of things been stolen. The copper wire has been pulled out. The copper that's used in air conditioning, it was pulled out and stolen. Some of these higher end houses had copper downspouts. They disappeared. I mean, it's just it. It was a bad movie. It really was. It was a nightmare that we never thought we'd wake up from. And in many ways, we still haven't. I mean, we still have scars. All of us have scars, whether it's financial or emotional, going through there. In fact, I lost my home. I had to sell my investment properties. Credit was tightening up, payments increased, and I had a family health crisis all hit at the same time. So I was trying to sell stuff at a discount so I could have some extra income because income was being cut at home, and also didn't know where we were going with this health risk, this health issue. And as you know, not everything is covered by health insurance. So we were trying different things to keep everybody alive and healthy. But we survived. We're still here. So what are the lessons? The number one lesson, or the first lesson I learned from this experience was, do not listen to the experts. And what do I mean by experts? You turn on national news, cable news, whatever, and there's people that are on there all the time that talk about money and investments, things like that. And after a while, I started learning that they had some vested interests in saying what they're saying. That actually wasn't really smart advice, but it worked for them. I'm not going to name names, but I got a handful of people that are still in that industry, and they definitely have some skeletons in their closet. But anyhow, what they do is they'll either sell you something that's really crappy or tell you to go invest in something that actually isn't that good, or it's an industry that's failing, and they go, oh, like with the stock market. I remember a thing that Robert Kiyosaki did. He went on, I can't remember which station it was, and he talked about how these things work with mortgages and how it's going to cause the stock market to collapse. And they laughed at him, said, oh no, this is just a little speed bump. It was bad. They create more fear than anything, or they'll pump up things that aren't good for you. So anyhow, whatever you see on TV, cable news, national news, always remember they've got a vested interest. They have other things playing besides telling you everything you need to know. So what do? You watch and listen to the real experts and look at what they say and do. People that are in those industries that are either making a buck or trying to cover their rear ends because the market's going down. those are the ones you're going to learn from. And it's, it's not something you just find in the same day. It takes time. You got to talk to people. If you're in a certain industry, like if you're a real estate investor, you go to these RIA meetings and you talk to people and you find out who knows what about what. Um, for instance, one of my guru instructors, I mean, I knew him for years and everything he said came to pass. And so over time, I really trusted what he was saying because he was doing well. And he kind of predicted this. It wasn't Robert Kiyosaki, it was another guy. And basically, he was showing some charts and he said, this can be really bad. So hold on tight. Now, he was someone, his investments were primarily single family houses, Southern California. And he knew that something bad was going to happen. He didn't quite know how bad it was. So he had a lot of different types of houses, some that are really good performers and some were like, I bought it because I got a deal and it's not in a good area and it's not making a lot of money. So he thought, I've owned these for a while. I've got some equity in it so I could sell it and make, get some money out of it. So a lot of his non-performing properties he sold and took that money, put it into the ones that were doing well, paid down the loans, things like that, put some money in the bank so that he had a little cushion. So if things did happen like they did, people losing their jobs or walking away from their rental properties, things like that, and making a lot of other properties non-performers, he could afford it. He could keep them because he had a cushion there. And he also had the ability to handle the depreciation of the asset by paying off or paying down some of the mortgages. So he was able to still cash flow going through this. But yeah, he did sell some things. He took the proceeds from the sales, paid down the loans on the other properties he kept. He gave him more cushion. And when his tenants lost jobs and moved out, he could still handle the monthly expenses because think about it. Whether you own a house to rent out or you live in it, you have monthly insurance, you have payments on the mortgage, you still have to maintain it, even though you have no one living there, you still got to keep the yard clean, things like that. So you could hopefully re-rent it out someday. So he made it so he could handle the monthly expenses for what he did own. Plus, the money he squirreled away, he had some cash not only for a cushion, but also so when the market did crash, which it did, he was able to reinvest that into properties that are now worth less than half and start those over again. Not necessarily the properties he sold, but he could buy some more investments. So after a while, after a couple of years of recovery, he did quite well. So again, be careful who you listen to. Be careful where you get your information from. And don't take everything at face value. Okay? A little bit more. This is about my situation. Although I bought my home when the real estate market was starting to appreciate rapidly. And the reason why we moved at that time is because I had an opportunity to relocate with my employer. And we didn't think much of it. We just thought it was one of the waves of inflation, in Southern California. And turned out to be more, but initially it wasn't too bad. We were able to afford it and get in it. So the things I learned that I could have done ordinarily that I didn't do because I had a family member that wasn't doing well with health, we decided to stay put. And what I really should have done from what I learned is like my teacher who sold some of his non-performing assets, is that the house we bought, from the time we bought it till the height of the market, it more than doubled. It was like a $500,000 condo and it was way over $1 million, according to things like Zillow and the like. And it's just, $1 million for a condo. That's ridiculous. So if I didn't have the health issue in the back of my mind, 7x24, I probably would have done this. I would have sold my home, taken that money, put it in the bank, a large bank, a major bank. Now what I know is that it was the smaller banks that died and got bought out by the larger banks, but that's a whole other thing. And moved into a rental because rentals were very available and the rents were going down because everybody was buying houses. The competition to rent a house was not there. So, people that own the properties to rent out, they were dropping the prices to get them filled. And commercial property, I was trying to remember, like strip malls, they were still asking for more rent for those places. I thought to myself, they're going to just have an empty strip mall, and there was quite a few of those down there. Anyhow, so I should have sold my home, put the money away, rented for a few years. So after it crashed, I could take that money and buy a bigger and better home, which I knew I could do. But family comes first. Okay, lesson 2. If you have a significant amount of money in the bank, learn about how the FDIC works. FDIC is a federal government program that insures money in bank accounts. Okay, but there's limits. And everybody thought they knew knew the rules. I thought I did. And one of the rules is it'll insure your assets up to a certain level per account. And we thought, we meaning the average Joe banking person, would be fine. But when we found out, it wasn't like per account, it was per institution. So if you had a lot of money, it was wise of you to spread it around across several banks, and then it would have been covered. I remember some of these smaller banks, excuse me, these smaller banks, they closed. There was run on the money, and banks don't carry that much money anymore. Everything's, especially now, everything's either done on your phone or with a credit card. People don't carry cash anymore. So the banks don't have cash. You go to the ATM, if it's a busy day, you may go there after work and find out there's no money in the ATM because that's all they have. So they closed up until the federal government came in and figured out what to do with them. And then, they sold their assets to other banks. They went out of business. They went bankrupt as well. So whatever you put your money into, if it's significant, and what's significant to you is significant to me, it could be different. That's up for you to decide. But if you're going to invest in anything, put money into anything other than a few bucks, like Robert Kiyosaki says, start out small and learn the ins and outs. And if you like it, learn more as you learn. Excuse me, I got allergies today. And go forward. You may find out it's not for you and pull out. But the thing is if you're going to put in something, I hate to say this, because we're all guilty of it. Read the fine print. Learn what FDIC does. Same thing with your retirement account. Excuse me. There's another government program that secures pensions. It's not 100%. So you need to know these things. If you've got money in and you expect it to be there when you get older or whatever, make sure you know what's going on. Okay. So, yes, know how the FDIC works if you've got cash in the bank, a significant amount, to make sure it's covered, especially if you think things are going to crash, which they can at any time. There's no crystal ball. No one has one of those. Okay, lesson number 3. If you're partnering with somebody, other investors, vet them well. Vet them like you would a friend. Is this someone you would trust? Would you trust them with the keys to your house, your car? Like, here, Bob, here's the keys to my vet. Go out, go take it for a spin. Do you trust them? Or do you think that if you gave them the keys, they would disappear with the car? You need to vet them. It's not just, you can't take things on superficial. There's just too many people that have been taken down the drain by unscrupulous people that had a nice dog and pony show, and people handed their wallets over and they lost. I won. Okay. And that's part of getting into business or any kind of investing. Sometimes you take risks that you shouldn't, and bad things happen. But on the flip side of that coin, good things happen too. But you got to get with the right people if you're going to work with people. And everything's a people business, especially investing. All right, enough said there. So, and find out how they've done with past investments. They may be in that field, whether it's real estate or business or restaurants, whatever. How did they do in the past? Did they have a lot of issues? Do you know they've been thrown in jail? I have known a few people who've been thrown in prison because they were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. Talk to other people who have partnered with them. How are they still partners? How's it going for them? If they're no longer partners, why did they sever that relationship? Things like that. you need to know and listen to your gut. And this is the last thing here. Listen to your gut. If your gut is telling you something's wrong, now trust me, I have followed my gut quite a bit, and there's a couple times it's been wrong. I remember we did a business deal, my wife and I, and I'm looking around this area. We're going to an antique show. We're going to sell some of our antiques. And I thought, it's out in the middle of nowhere. I have a bad feeling about this. We came all the way out here, drove hours to get here, rented out a truck to carry all this stuff, and it's not going to work. This is a waste. Let's just go home. We stayed. Set up at the show. And the next morning when they opened the doors, the place was packed. There were like actors there, people celebrities, and they were so happy just to hand their wallet over to us. I kid you not. Cash in my pockets were falling out because there was so much. That was wrong, but for the most part, listen to your gut. Your gut will tell you something. It may say there's some red flags there. Look for them, see what's going on. It could be you're just nervous. You're doing something you've never done before, and you're just getting a little upset about that. That may be all it is. But on the other hand, if you're going like, something doesn't seem right, something seems too good to be true, investigate. People you work with, deal with, investigate. Talk to people. Also find out what's the real reasons for wanting partners. Okay. Why aren't they doing these deals on their own? How come they can't finance it? We were in a deal with somebody for an apartment house. So there were several of us partners, secondary partners. He was the main partner. And things started, as I said, your gut starts telling you things. Things just didn't seem on the up and up. And then we found out he was making this dream house of his. So what was he doing? He was having us basically, instead of using a bank to take some equity out of some of his rentals for this purpose, he was using our money to finance his mansion. Well, as you say, karma. When everything fell apart, he lost that too. But we all lost money as well. Excuse me. So what's the real reason for wanting the money? Or some of them will tell you things, say they're a teacher, a guru, trying to get you into a business deal or a real estate deal. And their philosophy on how to do things, what they say do and don't do, and they go the same direction. So you got some believability there. It's like, I respect this guy's got some character. But like in the same situation, this guru taught to not do speculation. And what is speculation? Basically, you get some information in and you think something's going to go a certain way, but you don't have proof. It just, I hear that they're going to start developing this area, or, a large company's going to move in. So they're going to be hiring people. So people are going to want to move there, live there. So if we buy this property in a few years, it's going to be doubled or tripled or whatever. Well, anyhow, because of the market, obviously, that never happened, or it didn't happen at that time because everything crashed. So if someone that you've taken training from, you're also going to do business with, make sure that they follow their own rules. They say, don't speculate, and they want you to speculate with them, something's not right there. And again, trust your gut. If there's anything that doesn't feel right, research it. It may be nothing. Like I said, you may be just nervous trying something new, or it could be that there's something really hinky going on and you don't want to go down the drain with them. So that's lesson 3. Lesson 4, choose your education and training carefully. All right. Especially nowadays, things are changing so fast. We've got AI going on, jobs are disappearing. There's so much chaos going on. It's hard to figure out where to go. Where's the path? Degrees. How many the last 10, 20 years people have got degrees in things that don't pay, or those careers don't exist anymore. But a lot of people took out student loans. So not only they need a job so they can feed themselves, house themselves, but they also have their financial aid they have to pay back. Some of these degrees are for careers in bygone, dying out era. The jobs are dying out. So what do you got to do? It's like anything else. You got to do your homework. Figure out if what you're learning, if there's going to be a job at the end, or if you're learning a system for a business, is that kind of business still going on? You may get more education and training and be employed to pay back your loans if you're lucky. This happened years ago in my college years as well. When I started in IT, a lot of people I worked with had degrees like mine. I had a psych degree, a bachelor's in psychology. I remember one guy had a sociology degree. Bachelor's degrees in those fields, usually there's nothing for you to do. I mean, in psychology, I had people headhunting me for getting into management training and doing sales because they figured, you know psychology, you know people. Yeah, I wasn't interested in either one. But anyhow, many of my peers had the same kind of degrees. Today, when I retired, no, I didn't retire today, but when I retired from IT, um, when I first got into the field, it was real basics. You could do some basic programming, understand infrastructure, things like that. At a basic level, you could find a job. In fact, when I first went back to school, took what they used to call basic programming. And you could take the class, and there was people they were hiring for you just to do that. By the time I retired, um, the people I worked with in the field um, were at such a level I couldn't even understand their language half the time. They all had master's level in that field. When I started out, you didn't even need a college degree to make money in what we call IT now. Back then, it was just computing or computer programming, and things have changed. If you get a bachelor's degree in whatever they do now, I guess AI is the big thing. Coding is done by machines, not by people. Um, I don't know if bachelor's degree gets it for folks in that field. So anyhow, um, check it out. You may pay thousands of dollars for a college degree. You may pay thousands of dollars for private education, whether it's vendor training or through some guru, for real estate or investing or, starting a restaurant business, whatever. It's not cheap. And you want to at least get that back when you apply what you've learned. Anyhow, so be very careful. Like I said, it's even worse today. Things change fast. That you need to keep a pulse of the markets that you're involved with, whether it's investments or certain industries. Um, what kind of careers? Today, I would be a dinosaur in IT. If I wanted to go get a job in that field today, I'd have to go back to school and learn all sorts of new stuff, get certifications. Where when I started out, you didn't need a certification for nothing. Today, you got to be certified. Otherwise, they won't even interview you. So yeah, I'm a dinosaur. I look like it, but that's okay. Yeah, catching up would be expensive, not only financially, but time-wise. Um, and the same thing goes through the private guru training. Some of these people will teach you methods and concepts that are still being used in the field, but the field is impacted. They have trained so many people and the opportunities are limited, like a lot of places or a lot of things. And so when you get out there and try to apply what you've just paid for and you're learning, you find out that the people that went before you have all those jobs or have all of those investments or have those businesses, and there's no room left. So you got to be aware of that. Or the opportunities are drying up that, like with AI, there's a lot of jobs that are never going to be had again because machines do it now. So you may go to school for 4 years and on the other end, there's no place for you to go. Same thing, like I said, with the guru training. A lot of things that they'll teach you are outdated. Some of them. I'm not just saying any guru, but I'm just saying that from my experience, I've run into these people. And you don't know because you're just starting out in the field. And you pay thousands of dollars on such schemes. By the time you're ready to implement, the market is dried up. And some of the techniques may even be illegal now that they were doing 10 years ago that was, not regulated or anything else. But now you tried that, someone's going to be knocking on your door saying, you can't do that. And so, as I always say, do your own homework. You need to do some research. And, act swiftly if there's an opportunity, but act with knowledge. Be aware of what's going on because you may jump off a ship and find out there's no dock there and you go right into the water. I have, by saying no to many opportunities, have saved me thousands of dollars because I had the knowledge of knowing, yeah, that's not going to work. That's a dying field, or, they're charging way too much for too little. Okay, lastly, lesson 5. Understand the current situation with the markets. Okay, so like I said before, when all this stuff was going around 2008, I learned about liar loans, and they were starting to impact the stock market, including my 401k. And so, like I said, I think I first heard about this with Robert Kiyosaki, and then he interviewed some other people that were experts in the field of mortgages and what happens to them after you open one or create a mortgage. It gets sold on the open market and gets tranched up with other similar type of mortgages, ostensibly. Is that the word I'm looking for? Anyhow, they're supposed to be like kind. So you have everything in these tranches from like the very best of the best, that these people never default. They're multimillionaires. They make a lot of money. They're not over leveraged. These loans are going to do well. They'll pay it off the whole bit. And then you got all the way down to the other end to where they're high risk loans. That's the high interest rates. These people tend to walk, things like that. Well, what they were doing is they were putting a little bit of everything in each tranche. So you're thinking you're buying something that has high quality, low risk, and you find out there's a lot of foreclosures in that investment. And now guess what? You are left holding a bag of worthless mortgages. So, and I learned what stocks that impacts, things like that. So in my 401k, I did research on the things I invested in. And I primarily invested in growth stocks, things like that, because I wanted to really get my value of my retirement up as high as I could before I left. And I was getting close to retiring in 2008. And I realized I didn't want to risk it. And I'm glad I did this. I moved assets out of those investments into what they call a stable value fund, which is kind of like an annuity. It pays very little, but it's safe. It just, you're not going to lose principal. And when the what hit the fan, because I was telling my peers what I was doing, I'm saying, hey, you got to be aware of this stuff because you got money in your 401k and you want to retire without having to work to the day you die. You need to listen to me and do some research and figure it out for yourself. And they were listening to the experts, the ones that were managing their money, were telling them, it's like, this is just a blip, stay the course. And they were blowing me off for what I learned. And what happened to them? They lost a lot. And there's a lot of people, my peers at work, that were close to retirement age like I was, and they lost a significant amount of value in it. And they didn't have the time to recover. Some of them recovered some didn't recover hardly anything at all because they already planned to leave. And it was sad. I mean, they did not retire to the lifestyle that they were hoping to retire to. So in conclusion, hopefully I didn't depress you on this. I mean, but just life is life. You just got to be aware of what's going on. You just can't, put everything on autopilot and expect, something to be great. You have to do some work. So be aware, be contrarian. So if you see people going down the wrong direction, if you see people in markets moving a certain direction, if it's early, you may want to join them. It may be a good growth opportunity, a good investment, good career. But if it's later in the season, like, this career or this industry's been around for a long time and it's not growing anymore, you may want to think to go someplace else. Because if it's too good to be true, you may want to turn around and run the other direction as fast as you can, because you don't want to be a lemming going off the cliff. You want to be the one that's putting your money out of the high risk, high growth investments into something a little more safe, because, the turbulent waters are coming, storms coming. But this has been like one of the biggest lessons in my life about things like this. And I learned it because I went through it. I went through it. And yeah, be contrarian. Not everything that is really cool is going to pay off. So be careful with the people, be careful with the investment, be careful with your training, all those things, because you want to be able to survive and thrive. All right, well, I hope this video has been helpful to you. If so, please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, God bless. Thanks for watching.